Thanks for coming out. My name is Mark. I'm one of the volunteers here. You'll see the other volunteers standing up around here and at least one sitting down in the back there. Raise your hand, volunteers, please. If you have questions about afterwards about telescopes and stuff like that, just come tap us on the shoulder or whatever, and we'll do the best we can to answer your questions.
There's telescopes out both doors.
We've got some telescopes on both ends. We'll get to that in a second here. Who's been here? Raise your hand if it's your first time here. Wow. Okay, raise your hand if you know this guy. Okay, I thought I saw a couple of you. This is John's at least fourth time doing this for us. He has a little tweak every time for that. He's got he's his own warm-up act tonight, by the way.
Somebody's got to do it.
I'm not his warm-up act.
No.
I'm just here to introduce him.
You'd better
A
look.
little bit about we are here to promote education in math and science for these guys. Primarily kindergarten through grade 12, although we do groups for anywhere from 2 to 90 and sometimes 95.
Yes.
So that's what we do. That's why we're here. The 2 big telescopes and a couple of refractors piggyback on those telescopes as well. We are a nonprofit donation and grant run organization. We don't get any money from the school system. We do, however, get a phone line, power, and water, and a restroom to use. So that's what we get from in place to put the building. So they do support us by, if you in the Thompson School District, in the high school, one of our other volunteers, Scott, teaches physics and other classes here at the high school. He does a night astronomy class. So anybody in the Thompson School District and the high schools can go to that class every semester. We have a donation box there in the back if you like what we're doing. We don't care how much you give us, 5, 10s, 20s, 100s are fine. We got a better laugh than it did the last time. Thank you. Maybe it helped looking away. We have a few items for donations. Some, I think we're out of hats. Some T-shirts, pens, books. One of them, the one, "What's Hot on the Moon Tonight," was written by one of our volunteers. Some other T-shirts, bookmarks are also taken by Scott, who did all those pictures on the books. Bookmarks were taken by Scott James, who teaches that night astronomy class. So all that comes from that. So there's a small area there for donations. For you to put donations in there or in the back box there by my table sitting there by right now. Without further ado, John Ensworth.
All right. Give me a show of hands if you have seen the Star Wonder presentation before. Okay, yes, the volunteers. So you guys can sleep until the end. I go, here comes the new stuff.
Hopefully if I start snoring.
All right. So I am my own warm-up act here, so let's jump into that first. LIGO, I think is how you pronounce this, is the Laser Interferometry Gravitational Wave Observatory. Is something I keep returning to in these news updates because it's a whole new type of astronomy, looking at the waves of space-time itself, traveling through the universe and getting to us from big things merging, black holes and neutron stars and like that. The first merger, the first proof that Einstein was right came just 14 September, year 2015. Second signal came June 2016. The lead scientists got a Nobel Prize in 2017. And I just wanted to update that we are now up to 54 detections of these events so far. So just in case you weren't paying attention, they are picking up speed, they're increasing the accuracy. There's plans to add additional observatories around the world to make it so they can really pinpoint where things are happening and use other types of telescopes to see whatever you can see looking into that spot in space. So that instrument and something called the Event Horizon Telescope, and that made news earlier this year, have the chance now of figuring out something called the information problem. That if you take your couch and throw it into a black hole, where does all that information about your couch go? Is it gone from the universe forever, destroyed down inside the throat of a black hole, which is what our understanding of physics today says? Or do you save quantum mechanics and not destroy the information? This keeps physicists up at night, and they have lots of ideas. There's your normal black hole with the boundary around it that nothing ever comes out of. And they've come up with ideas where you have, they call it the soft hair model of a black hole that lets the information sneak back out even though the matter goes in. Black holes that really aren't black holes, they stop before they get there, and they're kind of fuzz balls of an unbelievable density, but that keeps them so they can lose that information, give it back to the universe. There's a firewall idea where everything is destroyed and the information is bounced back out or radiated back out into the universe before it gets into the black hole. And then this fuzzy quantum halo where a black hole acts like a subatomic particle and has this weirdness around it that lets the information get out. There's serious problems with all of these. None of these are great. And so what do you do? How do you know except looking at black holes? So here's what LIGO sees, the waves of colliding objects. This is an actual image of the space right around a black hole in the center of the galaxy M87. This is pronounced M87 or Messier 87 star. The black hole in the center of our galaxy is called Sagittarius A star. And this is the warped light coming from on the back side as well as the front side, bending in a lens-like way in space itself. And down here in this darkness, someplace is the black hole itself. So with this information, making these things more and more precise, we're going to be able to see if any of these are kind of right or whether we can go new directions. But this is exciting times to be able to get real data and not just make stuff up. Now with the new year coming in, changing topics real quick, you've got a couple of times that the moon will be covering the sun from the point of view of the Earth. One's in June. It's going to be going from Africa across southern Asia and out into the ocean. This is an annular eclipse, so nobody gets completely blocked by the moon. There's a little bit of sun all the way around. Still dangerous to look at, but I don't know if anybody's planning to travel over there next year, so probably okay. The next one is a total eclipse. Totality is only about 55 miles wide, and it goes across South America, and just part of it is partial bite out of the sun is visible from part of South Africa. So nothing around here. Sorry. All right. So any questions on black holes or black holes in the sky? All right,
John.
Yes.
That last eclipse, is that hitting Hawaii? I cannot quite see.
No.
that.
No, Hawaii's over there. Yeah.
Okay, not quite. Okay.
Right there.
Starts in the middle of the Pacific.
It might be Easter Island, though. It should. I bet it gets close to Easter Island. That's about right. Here someplace. Yeah. So the Star of Wonder, of course, very seasonal. We're bearing down on Christmas. Everybody's got your shopping done, right? How do we do this without Amazon? Let's have a discussion. I'm serious. Okay. Very good. This is based on a planetarium show created for the Kirkpatrick Planetarium in the Omniplex in Oklahoma City. It's played there for 35 or 40 years, I think. It was some very long time. I was trying to do the math just before getting up here. But I continue to kind of poke at it. There are other books and explorations of this topic. This is also a way to get some good astronomy out right before you go and eat Christmas cookies. So, but on the top of a Christmas tree, if you don't have an angel like we do at our house, you have a star. And there's one right here. So this is our audio-visual aid. We're leaving it on. And because Star Wars just came out, and this is timely every year, I know it's the Star Wars Death Star. You know Disney is not the reason for the season. So it's still very current. Never mind that, I think I've just discovered a new planet. These are wise guys. No longer here. So this is the typical picture that you see on Christmas cards and slides and like this and talk like this. Are 3 camels with guys riding and following a star like that. Or being parked over Bethlehem. Or on somebody's business card. So this spans a lot of different topics. So we get to play around with religion, history, science, philosophy, and we're going to kind of mix and merge these tonight. Of course, the star could have been the glory of God or an angel, if you believe that. And then that's the end of the talk. So good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. You can ask me about black holes if you want. Or maybe we can go further. Now, this is also, you got the Ark of the Covenant there and Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's what that was picturing. Was the, So we're going to start with the gospel and the stars to build up to this. Just to say that in Judaism, there was an astrological underpinning, and we'll see it in multiple Bible verses tonight. And with a meaning built into the stars that people were familiar with, could God have built into the heavens and put in people's hearts meaning such that it communicated what was about to happen? So that's what we're going to explore, what this star might have been and what it might tell us about the birth of Jesus. So, the belief that we're assuming for this talk is that God placed the meanings of patterns of the stars of the zodiac in men's hearts and placed a desire to tell what was to come there as well, that salvation is available to all mankind. So we have in Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the works of his hands. This could also explain, for those who are familiar with it, in Hebrews 11, the hall of faith, how you get people in the Old Testament knowing what was to come and having faith in that. Oh, I'm losing a laser. So, God placed the stars in Genesis 1:16-17. God made 2 great lights, greater light to govern the day, lesser night to govern the night. He also made the stars. Job 9, he is the maker of the bear and Orion. So we have Orion right over there. And we have some bears up here. And the Pleiades, a star cluster near Taurus. And in Psalm 147, he determines the number of stars and calls them each by name. And in Jeremiah 31, he says, I'll put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I'll be their God, they'll be my people. Also, in Jeremiah 31, this is what the Lord says, he who appoints the sun to shine by day, who decrees the moon and stars to shine by night. And in Romans 2, it showed that the requirements of the law are written in their hearts. So we have this link you might be able to make between the stuff he creates and the stuff that people expect to see and interpret. And that's also similar to Hebrews 8. All right, so to get into this, we need a few science terms. So let's start out with what a constellation is. Nowadays, there are 88 constellations. Same number of constellations there are keys on the piano, in case you ever need to know that. Every nation, every people came up with their own constellations. In the late 20s, astronomers sat down from around the world and decided we're going to have 88 official. They're going to give boundaries to all of them, so if anything happens in the sky, it belongs to a constellation. Just like going out into distant eastern Colorado, if you pick up a rock, it's a rock from Colorado, even if you don't see anything but fields around you and a few clouds in the sky, it belongs to the state. So everything in the sky is owned by one of these constellations, and they're usually patterns made from stars that are roughly the same brightness as the other stars in that constellation, and the eye kind of picks out a nearness to each other. Different people like the Lakota constellations are over here. We have it in this part of the star wall. It's quite different from the Greek and Roman constellations and more modern southern constellations over there. But if you go to like Japan and China, you get constellation counts up around 3,000 instead of 88. So that, you really have to study for that test in school. Next term we need is a conjunction. Conjunction is when two or more things in the sky get really close to one another. How close? Pretty subjective. If you look and go, hey, those are pretty close, you just saw a conjunction. So, and every once in a while you'll see the moon skim Jupiter or something. You'll go, hey, those are really nearby. In fact, it was back at Thanksgiving, we had, it was Venus and Jupiter, right? They were really close. And even my wife we were driving down the road, and what's that over there? And so she spotted a conjunction. The ecliptic is our next term. This is the path of the sun, the moon, and planets. So the solar system is largely flat. It's like balls rolling around on a plate with a big grapefruit in the center. And there's a little variation to it, but it's close enough that when you look in the sky, you see everything going through a bunch of constellations that are pretty familiar. Aquarius, what sign are you? Oh, well, I don't like to drink punch next to Capricorns. So, I don't know. Things that happen at parties. And what, we had 13 constellations now, because we have Ophiuchus added in, which is sitting, where is it? Right over here, yeah. So, somebody who's born between Scorpius and Sagittarius might be an Ophiuchian now. Bring that up at a party. So kind of putting the whole big picture together, we have the Earth with its axis north-south. We're tilted about 23 degrees off of this nice perfect flatness of the equator. The path of the sun, moon, and planets, we're tilted. So that means everything looks like it goes below our equator and above our equator at different times of the year. And the very important time is coming tomorrow night it's like 9:17, I think, where the sun will be right down here at this lowest point. So winter starts, astronomical winter starts. It's the winter solstice. And 6 months later, first day of summer in June, about June 20th or so. All right, so what is astrology? It's the belief that the position of the sun, moon, and planets and the stars tell us what will come. And of course, in modern astrology and the apps and things in newspapers, what's a newspaper? You have the belief that, or people believing that somehow the position of these things in the sky actually tell us about ourselves. And there's no physical backing for that. I mean, the gravitational force of your family and the couch next to you is much more than Jupiter is in the sky. So you might want to rearrange your furniture if things aren't right. So, in Hebrew though, astrology, the zodiac, the path of these constellations, this circle of animals, is called the Mazzaroth. And so in Job, we see, can you lead forth the signs of the zodiac in their seasons? Can you guide the stars that beareth the young? In Job also, can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons or lead them out with the bear and cub? So you've got the importance of this path of the planets and the sun and the moon in the Bible as well. So if you were God, would you communicate your most important message to humanity only via a book that would be later finalized in history, or would you somehow get the spoilers out early? Well, maybe this is what this is. So we would expect that many peoples would have similar figures in these constellations, and many did around the world. So we're going to start here. At this point, the sun right now is down here in December. This is it's close to the constellation Sagittarius. But we're going to start our tour looking at the meanings across different cultures of the constellations with Virgo and move around the sky and come back. So looking at the astrology in Judaism and Christianity, the first 4 constellations tell the nature of Christ, his work, and his triumph over sin and death. So we start with Virgo, the Virgin Mary being the first constellation here. And we have a queen, wives, a mother, a daughter, and to the Catholics and the Legions, the Virgin Mary herself. So the meanings are there. So in our Gospel in the Stars, this is the birth of Christ. Then we have Libra, the scales, is the next one. It's a balance of the justice in human affairs as well as a balanced arrangement of nature's laws. Probably Egyptian in origin. To the Hebrews, it was the scales, or balance. So in our Gospel in the Stars, this is the false gospel of good works versus bad works. And if you do lots of good things, then you get to heaven. If you're a bad person, you don't. That's not the story at all. It's a gift. Another spoiler alert. The Scorpion, near the bottom here, we're at the lowest part of the sky. Birthplace of Mars, god of war, regarded as a source of storms. It's a scorpion. It's Maui's fish hook, to people who went and saw Moana. Scorpion is the deadly foe, Satan's sting or death. This is the foe that Jesus defeated. The next one is Sagittarius, going along. It's the first of our split constellations, a constellation with 2 natures in one. It's part man, part horse. So we have a centaur here. To the Babylonians, it was an archer, god of war. A centaur in India, it was a horse's head with a fan of lion's tails. Part dragon, part tortoise.
What?
Yeah, crazy stuff. But for our astrological push here, it's the dual nature. It's a first picture of Christ in the story here, firing an arrow into the heart of death, because he is firing the arrow into the scorpion. The second group of 4 constellations is the fruit of Christ's finished work, position as our mediator in the relationship between Christ and his church. So we have goatfish here. We got a half thing again. The strange things are in the sky. This is Bacchus's goat disguised as he drove into the Nile. In ancient Chinese, it was an ox, and it was later a goatfish and a black tortoise. In Egyptians, it was a water god bearing a goat's horn. So lots of similarities there. There's a goat to all these different people groups as well. Water in these stories, this story going around, is a picture of the Holy Spirit. So it's another dual nature. So we have another picture of Jesus here as the sacrificial lamb, and Jesus was for all time, and his Holy Spirit being in one picture. Next around is Aquarius, water bearer. We've got 2 water buckets. Egyptians, it's Monius. Water is a water bucket to the Persians, Israelites, Syrians, Chinese, and Turks. great flood sent by Zeus. So as Aquarius is source of living water, it's Holy Spirit, also represents Noah's flood, cleansing of the world. And next is Pisces, the fish, another water one. Got two fish there. This is the current host of the vernal equinox, two fishes to the Hebrews. It's a pig pen in China, so they didn't come to the meeting this time. So this is the sign for the church of the age of Christ, the bride that Christ brought by his blood. And it's also the picture of the two testaments, Old and New. This is also the ichthys that you see on the back of cars and on the parking lot. But in use at least as far back as 200 AD. And this is the vernal equinox entering Pisces about the time of Christ's birth. The vernal equinox is wandering because the Earth's axis wanders. It takes a very long time to do this, 26,000 years to wobble. So the North Star right now is the North Star for your life. But if you get your time machine working and go 2, 4, 8,000 years in either direction, the North Star is going to be quite noticeably off. And so the constellations of the zodiac are also drifting all the way around. So from the time that the astrological signs that are in the newspaper were set down and anchored to months, we're almost 2 constellations off now, or 1.5 constellations off from then. So you really aren't born under those constellations. Sorry. But this is the, also where you get you guys are waiting for this, the song, right? The wonder will continue, and eventually the vernal equinox will end up in Aquarius, and that's where you get the, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Thank you. So it's sort of the call for the next age to come along. I'm sorry. I'm on antihistamines, and it's getting good. Next one around is Aries the ram, or the altar. Aries is the golden ram that saved the life of Phrixus. We got Israelites released from Egypt. They followed Moses in the wilderness. 40 years later, a ram swarm brought down the walls of Jericho. You got a ram or sheep to the Assyrians, Arabians, Persians, and Turks. And this is the sacrifice for all. Again, we're kind of driving this idea home. It seems to be important. The final sacrifice, the high and elevated deliverer. So, then coming out of that, we get the last group of 4 constellations. Tell us about the great judgment, the conclusion of God's plan. I got Taurus the bull. This is Jupiter's disguise. Druids held Tauric festivals when the sun entered this constellation. The Egyptians, it was the bull god Osiris. Babylonians, it was a bull. The Chinese had a white tiger, so again, they missed out on that. To the Dakotas, part bison, so part of a bison. But this is the resurrection. Scorpius is now setting in the west as this is rising. And this hints at the coming of Christ because this is just the front end part of a bull emerging out of Aries. So coming out of the altar, you got this bull coming up. So it's not quite a Godfather-like thing, but it's, yeah. So they got Gemini, the twins, going further up. You've got some, got that. 2 sons of Zeus, Castor and Pollux, the 2 stars there. Babylonians had twins, Greek mythology. In Polynesia, they were twins. Part tiger, part bird to the Chinese. So this is Castor, the head of the foremost twin. This Pollux, the strong one, came to labor or rule. It's a judgment by dual nature of Christ, also interpreted as Jesus and the church being one. So the bride and the bridegroom together. Cancer, the crab. Cancer is a strange name for a crab. It's a scarab to the Egyptians. Crab sent by Hera down to slow Hercules down. To the Germanic Slavic people, it was a crawfish. to the Indian region, crab, Rome was lobster, so you need some butter there. So this is the ultimate fulfillment of the promise. You got the star cluster, the beehive cluster in here that was known as the multitude or the innumerable seed promised to Abraham. And finally, the last one is Leo the lion, and this is Hercules had to slay this lion. Babylonians, Egyptians saw a lion here. The Greeks had a lion. It's the king, the lion, the house of Judah, and the end of this series in of time. So this is also Aslan in C.S. Lewis's books. And there are other astronomical links that are built into the Bible. We have Easter. I can't say, I'm saying Egypt too many times. Easter is placed on the calendar based on looking for the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the moment the sun is on the vernal equinox in Pisces. And that can occur as early as March 22nd to April 25th, usually about a week after Passover. Hanukkah occurs based on, 25th day is Kislev. It concludes on the second or third day of Tibet. And these are based on lunar cycles, so it floats around a little bit more than even Thanksgiving. Can go as early as, so this year it's December 22nd to December 30th. I don't have the early or late, do I? No. Bible mentions other constellations. I got, in Job, you got the zodiac. In Psalms, you got God calling the stars by their names. And even the 12 tribes of Israel relate to the 12 constellations of the zodiac, of the Mazzaroth. So we had tribe of Israel is Libra, whereas Leo is the tribe of Judah. And the way they built the tabernacle in the wilderness based on the constellations and rising and setting stuff that's too complex to get into, but it formed a cross in the desert. So where the different camps were around the priesthood in the center. All right, so lots of Bible astronomy connections. Let's keep on going now. So the Star of Bethlehem. If God had meaning written into humankind's hearts, could have been part of the Christmas story. So we need to figure out the time that we're dealing with. We need to figure out when Jesus was born. So let's jump into this. We have a system of counting years that suggests, well, BC, AD, pretty simple, just go right back to 1. Well, first off, we didn't have a zero. There's no year zero because zero was pretty evil back then. You kept the idea of zero away from the general public so they didn't get funny ideas. Because it's really easy to go, what's 0 divided by 5? No? All right, what's 5 divided by 0? How many zeros fit in 5? Infinity, yeah. So, you don't want the general public to understand infinity or beyond. So this is a time of turmoil. The Roman Empire was about maximum power at this time. Gaius Octavian had been emperor of Rome since 27 BC, now known as Caesar Augustus. And locally in Judea, Herod ruled, and he was a bad guy. And so Herod's rule kind of spans this section here. It starts at 27 BC and up to some point we're going to have to determine. No clear record when he was proclaimed king of Judah. Most historians think it was about 38 BC. Josephus helps with the death of Herod. In his book Antiquities, he said it occurred at the time of the Passover and just before the eclipse of the moon. So we have a lunar eclipse. And we can anchor this down pretty easily. We can take software, back in time, you can do this on your iPhone or Android device, and for probably $5 or even free, get a program that'll take you back. You can look at this eclipse yourself. So it's March 13th, the year 4 BC. And the Bible tells us that Christ was born while Herod was king, and so he died 4 BC, late winter, didn't have spring coming in yet. So the birth of Jesus had to come before then. Another historical clue is that we know that Mary and Joseph came to Bethlehem at the time of the birth to be counted and taxed. They didn't have the internet for some reason. It wasn't working. And so they had to pack up and travel and be counted in his hometown. And this happened during the reign of Emperor Caesar Augustus. We have 3 empire-wide taxations and censuses that we have record of. 27 BC, 7 BC, and 14 AD. So we can paint those in right there. And it took a while for these to happen. Again, communication was slow. You had to get the memo out across the land through trade routes and like that, and then everybody had to respond and go. So it was a pretty long process. So the one at 27 and 14 are too far away from our area of interest here with Herod and the lunar eclipse at the end of his life. And so the one that's going to work for us is the one at 7 BC. Okay, we know that Jesus was taken into Egypt by Mary and Joseph to avoid the decree by Herod that all male infants under the age of 2 be put to death. I told you he was a bad guy. And Jesus didn't return to Judea until after the death of Herod. And we probably have to give for at least a couple of years for the journey into and back from Egypt. So the only period where all these overlap takes us to about 7 BC to 5 BC. Remember, that's forward in time because we're counting down. I get confused sometimes. From Luke 23:23, we see Jesus was about 30 years of age at the start of his ministry. We're going to work backwards from clues later in his life. In Luke 3, his ministry started in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius. So now we can link his age and a reign of Tiberius that we know. John 2:20, in his dispute with the Pharisees, they complained 46 years was the temple and building, and you want to raise it in 3 days. And that conversation must have occurred around 27 to 29 AD. So Jesus was 28 AD. So 28 AD was about Jesus' 32nd birthday. So that means we can narrow his birth down to about 6 to 5 BC. So that gives a little time for the word to spread about the taxation too. So that gives us a buffer on the uphill side. Can we go further, maybe to the time of the year? The Bible says Jesus was born while shepherds were in the fields, keeping watch over the flocks by night. We celebrate Christmas, obviously, in December. But the weather, just like here, is cold, rainy. It's not the time to be out in the fields taking care of baby sheep. They would have been doing that in the springtime. So by process of elimination, we're down to springtime of the year 6 BC for the birth of Christ. All right, John, why don't we have Christmas instead of spring break? It's swapped. Well, that goes back to these changes in the sky. We talked about the path of the sun being on a tilted line that goes through these constellations of the zodiac. So when the sun's up here, the days are long, the nights are short, and the reverse. Right now the nights are long. And like we were talking about, we have little solar panel lights out here for the solar system model. You might want to use your smartphone light to look at some of them because there's not a lot of sunlight right now to charge them up, so they're kind of looking wimpy. So during that part of the year, the sun's daily path will be high. In the summer, high in the sky. In the winter, very low. And ancient people may have been concerned that the sun would keep sinking. The nights keep being longer. What if this trend keeps on going and it disappears forever? All right, well, Romans knew it was coming back. It did it every year. But it was a good reason to have a party. So they called it the Saturnalia, and it was a lot of celebration going on then. The 25th of December is when you're just making kind of crude observations of the sun. You're seeing that it's going further south, and then you finally can easily notice that it's on the way back up 4 days after the solstice. Then the 25th is we got proof the sun's coming back. So Saturnalia is centered on that day. And the Christians were in risk of their lives. They were found practicing a religion that didn't worship Caesar, so they celebrated the birth of Christ at the same time. All right, so if God built me in the heavens, prepared to the heavens to predict this, what could that have been? Well, let's get to the star now. So, a star was the object or combinations of objects that appeared in the sky. It was a looser term than we scientifically minded people today know that they are balls of mainly hydrogen and helium burning from the nuclear fusion in their cores. That wasn't the definition back then. And we had lots of different stars. We had fixed stars, we had bearded stars, new stars, falling stars, wandering stars. Let's take a look at these for possible star Bethlehem candidates. Falling stars are little bits of sand, grains of dust coming out of mainly comets. Comet goes around, littering its orbit. And the Earth goes through the orbit when the comet isn't there. And these little grains of sand burn up in the atmosphere. How does that happen? Well, together. I'm not trying to get applause. I'm just rub your hands faster. Ooh, you felt that warm? Okay, well that's tonight's cheeseburger turning into heat. These things are going really fast, many tens of miles a second. And so they burn up in the atmosphere, the dust settles down, and adds new material to the Earth. The Earth is still forming. And if you were like me and didn't vacuum your house until Christmas time and the relatives are coming over, you probably vacuum up about a pound of space dust. So don't throw the bag away. It's space dust. So could this have been a Christmas star? No, he's over in a flash, literally, and I'm not going to be leading anybody anyplace. The Magi, when we get to them in just a minute, probably needed a few months to be able to travel from their home over to Israel. Bearded stars. Oh, there's our comet right there. These do travel much more slowly than meteors do. And so they linger in the sky for weeks at a time or even months at a time. That's a good candidate. Very famous comet, Halley's Comet, is immortalized here in the Bayou, what is the name of it? The tapestry in Bayou, France, right up here, showing the Norman conquest of England in 1066. They're going, ooh, look at that. They're all pointing just like you guys would. But often, comets are seen as impending doom. This is when rulers are going to meet an untimely end, or nations are going to fall, and things like that. So these usually have a negative connotation to ancient people. And we don't have a record of comets appearing in the night sky around the time of the birth of Jesus. We have Chinese astronomers that have cometary records that go back into the BC years. So, yeah. Could be a new star or fixed star. These are really old stars. These are stars ending their life. They're really big, much larger than our sun. And they go out with a bang, supernovas. Or you can get material off of a star spiraling into a neutron star or white dwarf, building up a traffic jam of gas that ignites and explodes and makes a new star appear for a few days or weeks. And on July 4th, 1054, we did have a star like that in Taurus the Bull. They call it a guest star. And what we see today is Messier object number 1, the Crab Nebula. It's over there on the wall too. We have, you can see the Messier numbers are in blue, so you got a lot of the big, great Messier objects are marked on the wall over there, and this is number 1. So Arabian, Persian, Babylonian, Chinese astrologers did keep good records. Oldest supernova recorded by Chinese goes back to 185 AD. Sunspot, they actually saw a sunspot. 364 BC, earliest surviving comet is Halley, again at 240 BC. So that definitely shows that people were watching and writing stuff down at the time of the birth of Jesus. And supernova events, we only have 5 and nothing around that time. So I guess we have to go deeper. We can't use all the easy stuff in astronomy to explain the Star of Bethlehem. So who saw it? Maybe this will help us figure this out. We don't have biblical evidence to show that Mary and Joseph saw the star. In the claymation shows they do, but that's not necessarily biblical. The shepherds didn't. They recorded angels, but they did not report a star. There's angels. That would have been, I'm not to remember. We know King Herod didn't see it because he had to ask the wise men about it. And people in other cultures didn't either. Someone asked that. I had an extra section here of, I'm skipping, but in 6 BC, there were about 200 million people on the earth. Right now, we're at 7.53 billion. So that's like a good, that many people probably have already seen Star Wars. So I'm just jealous because I haven't yet. So you can see the civilizations that were around the birth of Christ, and you got ancient Rome, we've got Mayan civilization isn't quite getting up yet, ancient India is up, Imperial China, Japanese civilization hasn't gotten up and going yet. So in other world religions, the Zoroastrian religion had a prophecy of it, Judaism did as well. Some saw mention of, in Jainism, probably came from contact with the Zoroastrians. All right, so who saw the star in the Bible? And that was these wise men. So who were they? What did they do? Wise men, they call it magi. We get the word magic or magician from magi. They were soothsayers or astrologers of the Zoroastrian religion. They were high priests of their religion. And we only think there were 3 of them based on the 3 gifts they brought. There's no a direct head count in the Bible of how many there were. In Eastern Christianity tradition, they have up to 12 magi, and they have them all named and backstories and all sorts of stuff figured out. So they were astrologers. They spent their time looking at 5 special objects, stars that wandered among the fixed stars. And these wandering stars we know are planets. We have Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. But to the wise men, these planets were signs. They were markers moving among the constellations, foretelling the future of big events. Jupiter goes around every 12 years, Saturn goes around every 30, and they pass each other every 20 years. So that sets the stage for the Magi. So if the Star of Bethlehem was not a supernatural miracle, but a miracle in creation, then we can look to this astronomical, astrological possibility. And with these Magi being intent to this, there were prophecies already around like this. In Numbers, a star will come out of Jacob, a scepter, a king will rise out of Israel. And they had detailed prophecies as well. John Gill commentary on Numbers 24, you could better translate this to say, when a star steers its course into Jacob, then a scepter bearer shall rise up unto Israel. And so there would be a star, there's an index finger pointing to the prophesied owner of the scepter. What they would have noticed happening at this time was a very rare triple conjunction, which is again close pass, of Jupiter and Saturn. And like the constellations, the planets had their own meanings behind them. Jupiter being the brightest of them, and the only bright planet that goes all the way around the sky. Venus gets a lot brighter, but it stays close to the sun. It's an inferior planet, because, not that I don't like it, it's because it's got an orbit inside of Earth, and so it always remains relatively close to the sun. But Jupiter is the king because it's the brightest and goes all the way around. So the king, and Saturn is the harvester, or reaper, also associated with Cronus and time. So they would have read that as the harvester has come, the king of Hebrews is arriving. All right, and further, this happened in Pisces the fish, the house of the Hebrews, and the age, the current age where the vernal equinox is located. So the time of the harvester has come, the king of Hebrews is arriving at the dawn of the age of Pisces. All right. So what we see planets do is funny loops in the sky. If you went out night after night and drew all the little positions, or if you get your software out on your phone and speed up the time button, you'll see them go woo, woo, woo. And why do they do that? It seems like a weird thing for a planet to do, but it's actually our fault. Earth is going faster around the sun than these outer planets. So if you picture yourself in your car, you're trying to get to grandma's house, you're driving as fast as you can in the left lane, all the semi-trucks are in the right lane, you know they're going 65, 70 miles an hour, but you're doing 80. And you're coming up, the truck is up ahead, it's going ahead, but then the truck seems to go backwards, and then eventually you pass the truck, you're looking over your mirror, and the truck never changed speed, it's still driving down the road at 65, 70 miles an hour. But to you, from your point of view, the trucks seem to go backwards. So as the Earth passes the planets, as we go zipping around, they seem to go backwards in a loop in the sky. Retrograde motion. So what happened here, around 7 BC, was a triple conjunction. Both planets passed each other at the time that they were both doing this retrograde loop. And we're going to look at this little spot in the sky where Pisces is. The animation is going to look in here. And will somebody hit the play button for me? I don't think this will do that. Whoops. I went to the end, I think. Let me back up. You changed slides. Wait, try again. Okay, thank you. So here's March 22nd, 7 BC, and here we have the sun on the vernal equinox, so first day of spring. Here's Jupiter, here's Saturn, so you gotta keep your eye on the little roving planets. They get so close that the software actually, I think, takes Saturn out for a moment, so you gotta watch the little dots. And here's Uranus and Mercury over here. They didn't know about Uranus though. All right, so here it goes. I give myself a lot of lead time talk. Probably not. Here's the path of the sun, moon, and planets is in green. The equator of the Earth up in the sky is this red line. There we go. And there's Saturn right there. Saturn there. Saturn's back past 1. Past 2, this is taking a whole year to happen, past 3. And here comes the sun again from the other side. So a whole year's past, we're now up to March 10th, 6 BC. I think I do it again. Yeah, let's back it up a little. Click, 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 click. And off it goes. Keep your eye on Saturn right there. There's Jupiter. Okay, here we go. Set pass number 1. And the moon is zipping through each month there. There's 2 and 3. And this is Pisces right here in the background. All right. So how rare is it to get a triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn? I actually found a lot of things on the internet about this wrong. The internet can be wrong about something? Can't believe that. So I just had to sit down with the software and play with it myself. And we go back to 1953 BC, 908 BC, 861 BC, 146, 145 BC, 7 BC is ours, 452 AD, 967, like that. None of the others were in Pisces since the Zoroastrian religion was founded, which was around 450 BC. And we had only 14 kind of close to this in the past 2,800 years. So pretty rare, and when you mix in the astrological sign, that's the only one in this time span. There are other ideas that have been proposed over time. You have a lunar eclipse of Jupiter that occurred in Aries in 6 BC, really an occultation. That's a little late. Conjunction between Jupiter and Regulus in 3 BC, and 9 months later, conjunction with Venus, that's way too late. Between Jupiter and Venus, we had a conjunction in 2 BC, just not working out time-wise well. Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions occurred in 66 BC and 125, but not triple conjunction. So the best one that fits all the timing that we have is this above triple conjunction. And we'll see in a moment that Mars joins Jupiter and Saturn at the end of the time. And that would have really kicked the Magi's trip to Bethlehem off, because it meant here comes the warrior of the age. All right, and if you look at the Christmas carol, Little Town of Bethlehem, right here, "O morning stars together proclaim the holy birth." So hey, they got it right. Again, you can get all your theology from Christmas carols. So let's put this timeline together. Let's figure this all out. Roman world census is declared. Census reached Palestine here. You get the first appearance of the star here in 7 BC. Here's the second passage. Here's the third. Mars comes into it, and the Magi start traveling at the end of 7 BC. It takes them a few months. Meanwhile, Joseph and Mary travel, and Jesus is born right here in the spring. And then the Magi come, and Herod talks to them. He tries to do a little sneaky sleight of hand. They see better of it and don't give Jesus up. Herod gets real upset, does the order to kill the babies here. They take off for Egypt here. Herod's death is here, and then they return from Egypt. So that is where it used to end. But someone asked a few years ago, how did they actually find Jesus? I mean, it says the star went before them and hovered over the place. So it's kind of hard to do that with a triple conjunction, or is it? So we're going to try to go down even further. We're going to try to go a little bit. This is the new stuff. Wake up in the back. So Matthew 2. Now Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king. Behold, they came from the west, east. Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? Where he saw a star when it rose and come to worship him. That first conjunction did happen in the morning sky when that part of the sky was rising. So from this we get the arrival in Jerusalem happened after Jesus was born. During the star started them on the journey, and they were important enough to get to talk to the king. I mean, if you're just some 3 guys or 12 guys on camels, you just didn't get to go up and talk with the king. Matthew 2, And O you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, by no means the least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So we had this location here. That this surprised King Herod. The word then spread through Jerusalem that this was happening, and they had to look to the Old Testament prophet Micah that we looked at earlier to find out where this was occurring. Matthew 2, Herod summoned the wise men, and he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him." So Herod was ready to do the secret plan route, like, I don't want to worship him, I'm a good guy. He had to ask his advisors when the star appeared, were they possibly astrologers as well? This was just not obvious to him or the general population. Having heard the king, they went and came and stood over where the child was, and they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly, and came to the house. All right. The star continues to take an active role in guiding them, something, as I said, difficult to do. But was there something that Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars were doing or moving through in the evening sky that's lost to history? All right. Our final step really is, did the Magi go to Bethlehem, though? So in Luke 2, when they performed everything according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee. So Nazareth is referred to as the city of Galilee, the home of Mary. It's about 70 miles or a 2 to 3 day trip by donkey. According to the law, Jesus had been circumcised on the 8th day in the temple. Mary had performed purification on the 33rd day, because you're unclean. In the prophecy in Bethlehem, Herod ordered all the male children 2 and younger in Bethlehem and all that region killed. The Magi probably went to Bethlehem and may have had to travel to Nazareth to see Jesus. The shepherds knew about Jesus, and many more in the area probably did. So the picture that the wise guys went to the stable and the manger probably doesn't work either. Again, theology from Christmas cards, you can't do it. So that certainly could have included a town 70 miles away that would have been fearful of children being killed by Herod. So Jesus might have arrived back at Nazareth a month and a half after his birth. What's interesting is that the moment spring began, March 21st, 6 BC, the Sun, Moon, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, and Venus, and even undiscovered Uranus, only Neptune was left out, so maybe it shouldn't be a planet either, were all clustered together in the morning sky. They would have been overhead at the zenith of the sun at 12:47 p.m. in Bethlehem. So everything is up there. So, how they actually find Jesus? Mid-May of 6 BC, the Scorpion planets would have finally been visible again in the pre-dawn sky. As the sky began to lighten, Jesus would have been 1 to 2 months old at this time. May 15th, the moon scraped right over Jupiter, the king of the planets, in the pre-dawn sky. All these planets were clustered together before the sky got very bright. So here's a little bit of sunrise color, and here's everything together in Pisces in the vernal equinox. All right, so adding just a little more detail, Jesus' birth, probably around March 21st, if this is all right, 6 BC in Bethlehem. Magi meet him around May 15th in 6 BC in Nazareth. Magi don't return, then the kill order goes out late summer 6 BC. All right, so we're bringing it home now. So is astrology good for telling your future? I say no. Are the heavenly bodies something to worship? No. There are some interpretations of what the Tower of Babel was to do. Was in Genesis 11, they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to heaven, to the heavens." And people think really tall, but it very well could have been to worship or dedicate to. So it was to reach to the heavens, meaning-wise, not physically. And God really got upset about that. Our constellation is essential in telling of the gospel for Christians. Not anymore. We've got books and apps for that. But it might have been a way for God made all men without excuse when it came to knowing him. So in Romans 1, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities of the eternal power, divine nature have been clearly seen. To really get it, you have to know the author. You have to talk with him. And going back to science, being able to predict all this from the beginning of time, we have what's known as the three-body problem, that if you have two things going around each other gravitationally, it's pretty much like a clock. But if you start adding 3, 4, 5, 6 things with gravity going around, pretty rapidly little errors in your understanding of that magnify. That's why weather forecasting is so difficult. More than 10 days, 20 days out, you don't even have an idea. And you can't take your little astronomy app and go back a million years and know what the planets were a million years back or a million years forward, because little errors come in. So it could have been a miraculous star, an angel, or God's light, or it could have been a miracle, God putting the heavens into motion, that it all came together the way he wanted it. So, but it led the Magi to Jesus, who was born in a manger. Merry Christmas. So any questions? It's going to be added to this in the future. And it didn't cost much. Oh, that's good. Yeah. All right. What's the sky like, sir?
It's pretty clear. So Orion is up and very clear. So I would say let's go observe through the telescope.
Thank you very much.